Hi, Erin. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you? So sorry about that.
No, we love Instagram Live and all of its little hiccups every once in a while, but just
No, I honestly, I think it was human error. So
uh, no
it's
worries.
my
How are you? Excited for the conversation today? How's the day going?
Yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I mean, can't wait to do this after what was such a busy art fair
Yeah,
week last week here in New York. So it feels like, perfect timing, and especially going into all the exciting things we have for Affordable Art Fair this fall too. So yeah, I'm really excited.
perfect. Well, we're thrilled to have this conversation with you. I think you have a really interesting background, and the Affordable Art Fair is at an interesting inflection point as well, where it's growing and expanding. So today, want to just talk about the fair itself and talk about your experience building it and growing it, and share more about how people can participate in fairs, the role that they play in the ecosystem. So it should be a great dialogue. And we can just start with a quick introduction on you and the Affordable Art Fair, and then kind of dive into more of the Affordable Art Fair background and history, and go from there if that sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay,
So
so
do you
you want
want to
me to
just start with,
just get started with me?
yeah, quick
Yeah.
intro on you, and then we can dive
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, so I guess my background, I'm actually coming from sort of an auction world background. So I came to the fair via work at Christie's and Phillips, and then about a year at a gallery on the Upper East Side, which is now in Tribeca. And I was working mostly on sort of the finance and operations side and those jobs, and kind of the administrative side and the auction houses as well. So really kind of the business and like back of house work. And I loved it. I love the fast paced environment. I think auction is a wonderful place to start in the art world too. I think it's the best training. It really professionalizes you in a high stakes, high stress, high speed environment. But ultimately, I was always a fan of the Affordable Art Fair. I was a bit, a visitor, a volunteer, before this job came up. And so when it came up, I was just like, all right, that's my dream job. I have to go for it. So I'm really glad to have landed here, and I've been doing this for this. I'm in my fourth year. And it's a really exciting year. We'll get into this a little bit more, I'm sure, but it's a really exciting year to be at Affordable Art Fair here in New York, because we're not only expanding and growing the market in New York at Affordable Art Fair, but we're also our team is launching a fair in Boston this October as well. So yeah, just a lot of cool things on the horizon, and that means also growing our team, which is great. Yeah, so getting into, I guess, the history of Affordable Art Fair. New York has a 23-year history here in the city. So we are a 26-year-old brand founded in the UK, but we're global. We're in 15 cities worldwide. So it's really cool to work for such an international company and get so many perspectives and see so much of what's happening in the art market around the world. But, working here in New York, I've been working in this art market for like 12 years now. And I think, there's always something new to learn, and always, a lot of opportunity and growth to be had. So I think certainly challenges, but there is that opportunity for us to grow, and our fair is really special. So yeah, a lot of cool things on the horizon.
Awesome. And then in terms of the name Affordable, like the history that, where that comes from, like, can you share a little bit more about that, and just the kind of the nature of the fair in terms of how it's curated with the $12,000 price cap?
Sure. Yes. So, Affordable Art Fair, the name sort of alludes to the accessibility and approachability of the artworks inside. So it was founded on the principle that, art is for everyone, and that this should be a welcoming space, a space that people feel really comfortable, whether they have never been in a fine art space before, or if they've been collecting and looking at and been a fan of fine art and contemporary art their whole lives. So we, every fair around the world, all of our affordable art fairs have a price ceiling calibrated to the local market. Here in New York, it is $12,000. So everything you will see inside Affordable Art Fair New York is between $100,000 and $12,000. In Boston, that price cap will be $10,000. And actually, our Austin fair in Texas is this week. So this is also a fun time to be talking because an affordable art fair is happening in just a couple of days in Austin too. So yeah, so it's all sort of calibrated to that. But we really pride ourselves on transparency as well, making sure that the prices are labeled on the walls and again, just that kind of transparency, accessibility, welcoming vibe.
Yeah. And I know you, again, with a background in auctions and galleries, like now within fairs, like what role do you see like accessibility playing in the market? And I know you talk a lot about like the collectors of tomorrow and sort of how to make way for new people to experience art. Like in what way do you think that's important? And then beyond the price ceiling, like what other aspects of the fair do you guys emphasize to make sure that it's a welcoming environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something we talk about a lot, which is that the bigger we can draw the circle around the contemporary art world, the better, because I think this is something that certainly we're hearing from galleries, but also just anyone in the industry really is just that there's sort of a concern about finding new people, new collectors, finding people to enter the contemporary art space and get really enthusiastic about it and see the value in it. And I think that's really what, I know, I mean, I see it firsthand. That is affordable art fair's bread and butter. That's our specialty,
Yeah.
is reaching those people who just like haven't found their entry point yet. And we are that sort of safe space, I guess, for them to come and find out what they like and feel like it's, okay to ask questions and okay not to know everything right away. So I think, beyond the sort of that transparency aspect that I mentioned and knowing sort of what you're coming into with the price ceiling, the other things that we really emphasize at our fair are making sure that we work with galleries who are super friendly, super engaging. So this is not a fair that you're going to walk into where you see gallerists sitting behind their laptops at a desk, because this is a fair where they're going to be very much like on their feet, really engaged, talking with visitors. And that's, every single visitor who walks through the door. So it doesn't really matter who you are, what you look like, whether, you've been to an art fair before, or know everything about an artist process. That's not the point. So I think it's about building confidence in people's own tastes for us. And that's sort of what our mission is just to make art collecting and browsing art and being around contemporary art enjoyable. So that's sort of where that's the foundation that we build everything from.
Mhm. Yeah. And as a director, I'm sure you've seen stories firsthand of people having really exciting experiences at fairs. Do you have any specific examples of collectors that have come in and, maybe were feeling nervous about art, but then started calling themselves collectors or bought their first high value piece in something like the Affordable Art Fair?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I see this every fair. This is actually my favorite part of my job, is to see people buying their first work. Yeah, my two favorite parts of my job are working with first time exhibitors and seeing people who are buying their first work. But I do actually have a specific example from this last fair, this last spring, which is special to me personally because they were really good friends of mine. It's a couple that I play trivia with every week. So I see them every single week of my life. They're neighbors, they live in my neighborhood. But they're friends who, they work in finance. They're not like art people, and they've sort of been vaguely interested in what I do and come to support the fairs before in the past, but not really, they didn't feel like, it was ever the right time for them to sort of start buying original art. And the last two times that they've come to the fair, they've fallen in love with works. And the time before this this was fall 2024, they fell in love with something, but it had sold. And so they talked with the artist about maybe a commission, and that didn't sort of work out. But I've been hearing about that work for months and months, and they just loved it, and sort of the one that got away. So they came again this spring. They found a different work by a different artist and a different gallery that they fell in love with. And they just sort of asked me, like, what do we do? Like, how do we buy? And I said, well, the price is on the wall.
Yeah.
You see the artwork. Everything is there. All the information is there. It's all right out in front for you. So do you feel comfortable with it? Is that sort of the budget you came in mind with? And they said, well, yeah, I do feel comfortable. So they pulled the trigger and went home with the work and couldn't be happier. And so it was just like, seeing that, and it's, it's also a couple. So I've been sort of watching them over the past couple of years when they've been coming to the fair. I think part of the experience of them sort of seeing more art has been bringing their taste together a little bit more slowly over time. So that's been a special experience to watch too. Is just sort of like, that again, building the confidence in their own taste to sort of start talking with each other about it, not just,
Yeah.
with me or with a gallerist, but sort of saying like, honey, I like this. Oh, well, I like it too. What do you like about it? And that's really special to see that happen in real time. So yeah, it's nice to just like be part of that first step. And so now they're like, when's the next one? We want to come by more. I'm like,
Oh,
great,
that's
perfect.
awesome. Yeah.
Every 6 months.
Yeah, I think even at Cohort we hear so many, like a lot of stories about people being intimidated about art, and I'm curious, what are the myths that you see as someone that works on galleries and collectors, like an artist, that you are seeing either being dispelled or that you want to dispel through the Affordable Art Fair, and ways that you would sort of recommend collectors to get over some of those humps of intimidation, to buy their first piece.
Yeah, I think, you know, part of it, I think art is a little bit like, there's sort of this like mystery sometimes around art and like this like air of exclusivity of sort of like, I must, it's like, I don't necessarily need to know exactly like how my shirt was made before I go buy that. If I go into a store and I see the top and I like it and I feel like that's something that I personally would wear and it fits my style, then I'm going to buy it. And I don't need to know every little detail about the process or the background or the inspiration of the designer, right? But I think with art, that feeling is not quite there. And that sort of, there seem to be so many there can seem to be so many barriers to sort of like, I must know this and I must know this and I must know this. And actually, I think at Affordable Art Fair, what we see is a lot of that goes away once people start feeling comfortable, sort of like talking, having those conversations in that really friendly way of just sort of like, there is no wrong way to speak about art. There is no wrong way to speak about what you like. And so I think, the biggest thing that we're trying to dispel is just sort of like that there is it's literally there's no wrong answer in art. So it's like we don't curate the fair completely to my taste. That would be wrong. There's something for everyone. And I think like the whole point again is like we're building up from like this should be a joyful thing. This should be a thing that is like really fun to do. It's really fun to go see art. It's really fun to live with art. And so, it's something that should be an enjoyable experience and not scary in any way. So yeah, I think just trying to make it sort of, again, that entry point feels very like a very safe sort of ramp
Yeah.
instead of like a cliff that you just have to jump off of is something that we really focus on a lot.
Yeah, and I know price is probably a big question that people are sensitive about. Like, how do you recommend collectors engage in that conversation? I mean, I know it's great that you have the prices transparently under the works, and that's a requirement of the fair. But like talking to a gallerist for the first time, oh, my dog's making the entrance,
So cute.
barking a little bit, chilling. But yeah, how do you recommend structuring that type of conversation or a dialogue with a gallerist if you're poking around and you're interested in something, but you just want to get more information?
Yeah, definitely. Um I actually think so before I go I mean I go to other fairs, to browse and potentially collect. So this is definitely, and I work in the arts, so let's just say my budget isn't like huge. So this is definitely something, something that's on my mind all the time is like before I go to a fair, I think, something I really like to do is have sort of like have a budget really firmly in mind so that I understand, like, if I am interested in starting that conversation and engaging, I understand what feels comfortable to me so that I'm not like, it doesn't feel bad or sort of, it doesn't feel like a negative conversation if I have to sort of like say, okay, not for me because that doesn't fit within my expectations for today for myself. And it's a very individual thing. And I think like, you know, there are a lot of options too that buyers or, you know, emerging collectors might not know about. Like a lot of galleries and a lot of artists will allow you to pay in installments. That's not something that everybody lets you do all the time, but that is certainly something that is an option. And I think, you know, something that I encourage, you know, new buyers, new collectors to ask about in those early conversations if they're sort of curious about something. And it's just a little bit at the top of their budget or just outside, but they really love it. So I think something else is to look online at sort of, you know, and I think like online portfolios, if the artist or the gallery has an online portfolio that they can, that a collector can look at, and sort of if the prices are available on something like that, I think that's always really helpful, because then it gives me a sense of sort of, I love this artist's work, but am I looking at this artist's original paintings, or am I looking at this artist's limited prints? Or am I looking at, you know, small scale, large scale? What sort of fits within what I'm able to do right now? And that way it sort of like sets my own expectations so that I don't get on site and sort of mismatch with my own my own ideas. So yeah, I think doing a little bit of research if you really are sort of going with the intention to buy, I think is always helpful, and having those ideas sort of in your head so that, you know, it's similar to any sort of big purchase that you're going to make, but it's definitely, you know, within reach. And just you know, I think sometimes those money conversations can seem scary because it's the first time you're having them as a collector, but just remember that also the gallerist or you know, and or the artist, these are conversations that they're having all the time. So it actually is not a rude question to ask or a scary question to ask from their perspective. So it will feel comfortable once you start doing it.
Yeah, it's really great advice. And then beyond navigating like price sensitivity, like for emerging collectors or people that are just like starting to buy original works of art, like what types of trends are you seeing in terms of buying behaviors shifting? Like what do you see people maybe looking for that they were looking for like 10 years ago within the fair ecosystem? And then how do you think the affordable art fair is tailored specifically for the collectors of tomorrow, so to speak?
Yeah, this is something I've been talking about a little bit with sort of various people related to our fairs, but I've been seeing, you know, younger collectors, particularly a huge part of our audience, majority of our collecting audience is Gen Z and millennial and a collecting audience. So that's great for the fair, you know, that it shows that we are really that great entry point for younger collectors. But what we're seeing from them is that they're really interested in sort of this like, I've been using the term conscious collecting, which is not necessarily like, it's not a term that I'm coining or have coined, but I think like, you know, it's out there a little bit, but I think that what it means to us or kind of to me is that they're looking for a more like personal collecting experience. So I think especially from like my auction days, I'd say like 8-10 years ago, and certainly I was also in that environment, much, you know, entrenched in that environment, but art as investment or art as asset, like there was a much more business and like financial like conversation around art. And it that was sort of taking, I think, the forefront. That was sort of like more in front of some other conversations that I feel like we're having now, which is how do I relate to this artist's story, or how do I relate to specifically this subject matter, or how does this process sort of speak to me on a like individual or spiritual level even. And I think that's kind of a more engaged way of collecting, and I think it's really interesting and special to see how that is evolving in the fair, because I think it does encourage a lot more of those one-on-one conversations and a lot more of those personal connections with either the artist individually or the gallerist. And the gallerists we are a gallery-led fair, so our exhibitors are either galleries or artist collective. So we often do have the artists on site and they come and support the fair, which is fantastic. But you know, the gallerists are also really best positioned to sort of facilitate those personal connections as well, because they know so much about, they work so individually with their artists and intimately with their artists. And so having that ability to connect with our visitors and in that way too is really cool to see. So I've just been seeing a lot more people, like, you know, you asked about a new collector. I saw a young woman collect a work by one of our artists that sort of is very mathematical about his process and approach, because she is a physicist. And so like she
Oh,
just sort
yeah.
of, she recognized something in his work that maybe like other people might have missed or didn't quite notice, because you know, it really just caught her eye, and she was sort of like, I understand exactly what it goes into this process, because you know, this sort of math aspect is speaking to me. So yeah, things like that I think are just kind of taking the forefront, and we're seeing a lot more of that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And then I guess zooming out a little bit, when you look at the fair model within the broader ecosystem, like what role do
Yeah.
you see art fairs playing, especially coming from, again, the auction world and having worked within the gallery ecosystem too, and like as the future is shifting with the next generation of buyers, artists, like where do you see fairs moving to in the next 10 to 20 years?
Yeah. uh, Gosh, I hope I can predict what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. Yeah, I think, you know, I think that we're also seeing, you know, another trend that I think we're seeing a little bit is like a gravitation towards, we're in such a digital world. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of that move away from, you know, that sort of like the luster of some of this like new media is going away a little bit. We're seeing a little bit more like gravitation towards more tactile things, more again, more social in-person things. And so I think actually like as we move forward, I feel good about the fact that people are still really interested in these in-person events, these social in-person events that can facilitate those you know, those intimate and personal connections. And I think that's, and we all know when it's so much better to see art in person. Like when you see something in person, it just, it has an aura and it feels different, and you might like something totally different than you thought you were going to like online. So I think I feel really good about that. I do think that there is a lot that technology can streamline for what we do in fairs. And I'm really excited about sort of like operationally where I think we can go with that, because I think that there's a lot that, you know, a lot of our galleries do, you know, 5 to 10 fairs a year. And so it's like, you know, to do, I mean, that's a huge lift. That's a lot. So it's like to do something like that, you know, if they, you know, to really streamline inventory management, CRM, payment portal, you know, invoicing, to be able to streamline those things, I think, and make those easier all in one place for them. I would love to, you know, make all of that, you know, really funnel down for them. But I think in terms of where we're going to be with fairs and sort of where it fits in the ecosystem, you know, we see some of our galleries report, you know, over half of their revenue from art fairs
Yeah.
per year. So these aren't going away. They're just, you know, they remain a top sales channel for number one, getting new, you know, meeting new clients. So we talked a lot about that in the beginning. It is the best way to reach new clients and reach new audiences. And again, that is what Affordable Art Fair really focuses on and does best, is reaching those people that just like haven't figured out how to enter the fine art world. So those are the people you're going to meet. But then number two, we do really focus on, you know, helping art find new happy homes. So it's like, you know, we want to support those galleries and support those artists. And I should say that every artist presented at every Affordable Art Fair is a living artist. So that's really important to us, to support that livelihood of living artists. So yeah.
Yeah. And I know we're already halfway through the hour, which is crazy. So just to start thinking about wrapping up a bit, when you think about curating the fairs, like I thought it was really interesting in another conversation, you were talking about how many amazing artists there are in like galleries. You know, it's not, there's not a lack of quality like in this sort of emerging to middle market of artists. Just curious, like how you think about that process to offer a range of artists and artworks for the audiences at the fairs.
Yeah. Yes, so every affordable art fair has a selection committee, and we sort of and it is specific to that local market. So New York's is slightly different from Austin, Texas, for instance, because that's obviously a different market, and so we want to make sure that every market the selection really speaks to that audience. Our audiences do tend to be very local for the fairs. And again, that is very intentional because we are really trying to bring into the gallery, we're trying to bring to the galleries the audience of that city that maybe they just haven't met yet. So, yeah, so, our goal is to, again, it's not like curated to my personal taste. It's
Yeah.
very much like I'm looking with our team at sort of, we're always taking sales data. So we take art sales data at every single edition, and that is analyzed very deeply every edition, and then over time as well. So for instance, I just finished doing the report from post the spring 2025. So, I always kind of look at like a 2 to 3 year period. What artists are selling well, what kind of mediums are selling well, what sort of scale is selling well, that kind of thing. And I really like to try to have that report handy to make sure that as we speak to not only the galleries that, as we're doing literal acceptances, just sort of doing, which galleries are going to be accepted, we also, each gallery applies with an artist list. And our team likes to be very hands-on too with sort of giving advice or consultation about, these 4 artists out of your 5 on your artist list, we think are going to do very, very well based on what we know from the sales data. I would suggest maybe swapping out this last one because of X, Y, and Z reasons. So we try to be really hands-on and very proactive about those things because, again, we really want to be supportive and, the gallery success is our success, and really we want to see the artists do very well at the fair. So we think that everything we do is hopefully driven by data. And so that's why we try to collect as much as we can. So, and like I said, that's all calibrated to each local market. So Boston will be a little bit different from New York, and New York will be a little bit different from Austin, which will be a little bit different from all our European fairs, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, and it is really cool to see how sort of each galleries who do multiple of our fairs change their artist list or change their presentation style based on the location too. So that is really cool to see.
Yeah, totally. And one quick follow-up question is like balancing sort of the commercial versus conceptual nature of curation. Like, how do you see the most successful galleries do that have been growing with the Affordable Art Fair? And like, what advice do you have for galleries to kind of toggle that balance?
Yeah. Yeah, this is always an interesting question for me because I think, sometimes in the arts, commercial can kind of seem like a dirty word, or we sort of are like a little bit worried about it and wanted to run it. But we really do, again, like we want to support artists' livelihoods. And so I think, making sure that we are having the conversation about whether or not we feel that the sales aspect will be successful is an important part of getting, of preparing for the fair. So I think we see the galleries who are most successful at this, they typically, the gallery has a strong curatorial, galleries who are most successful have a strong curatorial sense sort of their own. So like I can kind of look at their artist list and, even before I see the gallery name on the application, I'm like, I know what artist this gallery, I know what gallery this artist belongs to because I kind of just like know the artist that they like. And so I sort of start to get a sense of like, their aesthetic or their curatorial style. And, it lends itself to a sort of like cohesion in their presentation as well. And like it really, all their artists really complement one another. But they're also, they're thinking about things like scale, they're thinking about things like price point. So they're really mixing those things up because especially in a market like New York, We see a lot of people who are interested in buying something for their small Brooklyn apartment, or they're interested, but other people might be interested in coming and buying something for their Hamptons house, and so it's huge. And so it's
Yeah.
like, I think we have to have this like really big range, which not every market needs to consider or contend with. And so this is something that we talk about a lot. And again, this all comes from data from our side of sort of just saying like, this is the average selling price of artworks over the last few years. This is sort of the scale that we're seeing work best in works that are sort of like this. And so, this is what we would recommend. And so I think with the galleries, I always love a gallery with a strong curatorial and aesthetic vision for their presentation. And so I definitely look for that in an application. That's not something I'm going to mess with, but I do usually then just start the conversation by sort of saying like commercially, or art sales wise, I think what we're going to talk about is making sure that we mix up that scale and mix up those price points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about fairs working in collaboration and partnership with galleries. And I think it's really important to use that data to help steer galleries. And it's probably interesting on your side to see it vary market by market and city by city. So I guess as we think about the next couple of fairs coming up, I mean, we have a lot of collectors and artists in Austin. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Austin Affordable Art Fair and then Boston and any other expansion opportunities or anything else on the horizon for the Affordable Art Fair?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. So, like I said, Austin is happening this week, and we do have a separate Austin Fair team because, again, that market is unique and quite a bit different from the two markets we have here in the Northeast U.S. So, definitely follow Affordable Art Fair Austin if you want to check out what's going on down in Texas and see what that fair will be like. That happens every mid-May. So we typically have about 55 galleries in that fair. And the gallery list there definitely differs quite a bit from, again, the New York or the Boston fairs. A lot of the galleries from Texas, which is really cool for me to see too, because again, it's just very different art, which is like learning a whole new market for me. So it's really exciting. Then for New York, so the next fair after that in the US will be New York in September 17th through 21st. That application is open and due May 30th. So we'll have about between 80 and 85 galleries at that. So we are moving to a new location. We have been in the Metropolitan Pavilion in Chelsea for many years, like over a decade. So it's really exciting. We're getting to grow a little bit, expand a bit, a little bit more room for visitor experience, smoother exhibitor logistics. So we're just really excited about doing that. So definitely feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on that as well. And Boston will be right after that in October 23rd through 26th. That application is also open and due May 30th. And that will be our first edition in Boston ever. So we're really excited because we got to bring all of the magic of Affordable Art Fair to Boston, and I think it's just going to be a really special market. And they don't really have anything like Affordable Art Fair, so it will just be totally new for the city and that audience. So I'm super excited to bring it there. And I went to school there, so it'll be like a little homecoming
Cool.
for me. Yeah, so it'll be really fun. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on all the success. Again, I think the expansion of this just highlights what a great job the Affordable Art Fair is doing and the important role that it plays in the ecosystem. So kudos and thank you for sharing all these insights. And you're clearly an amazing thought leader in the space. So I know our community really appreciates your time. As is my little dog. So we'll send out some updates to the community about how to attend the fair,
Yeah.
how to apply to showcase, and cannot recommend going as a collector, enough. Like I love going to the New York one and always bring my friends, and they're always not necessarily as arty as I am, and they have a great time. So I think you guys do a great job at making it feel approachable, but also again really high quality and something that's inviting and warm for a growing collector.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. And we're so excited to see Cohart in this space too, because I think for small we have worked so many small galleries, so it's like I said, just being able to streamline what they do and all of their preparations, not only for fairs but just what they do year round, is I think super important. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you today and meet your community.
Awesome. Well, good luck with all the prep. And again, we'll share with everyone how to get involved. But thank you, Erin, for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
All
Okay.
right, thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.